I hadn't heard my father's voice in 18 months. This morning, it came through static. The voicemail was short, blunt, even for him. "It's about your sister. She's gone." That was all. No hello, no explanation, not even my name. Just that one sentence like a rock dropped in still water. There were 14 missed calls, 11 from my mother, 2 from Chelsea, 1 from the man who hadn't looked me in the eye the night I left. I didn't answer any of them. I played the voicemail once, then once more softer as if the words might change if I gave them space. They didn't. My phone lay on the counter screen still glowing. I stood there in my apartment, the upstairs room above Grady's Hardware where I've been working since they erased me. Morning light slid across the floorboards, catching on a coffee cup I hadn't rinsed. The kind of silence that holds its breath. I didn't move. Not right away. I thought about my mother, Margaret Ward, the kind of woman who irons cloth napkins for Sunday dinner but hasn't called me since the day I said something she didn't want to hear. She would be pacing, maybe crying, but mostly calculating how to pull the family back together before the neighbors notice something's broken. I imagined Chelsea too. My older sister, always good at falling apart just enough to be forgiven. Maybe she had left. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe this time the mask had slipped too far. But none of that explained the calls, because when I walked out of their lives, they didn't leave space for a return. They never called to ask where I was staying, never asked if I needed help, not even on my birthday. And now, after all that silence, they were calling 14 times before breakfast. I reached for my phone again, but didn't unlock it. I looked at my own reflection in the black screen, tired still. My hair pinned back like my mother used to do when I was 12. She said it made me look decent. Back then, I used to think decent was a kind of praise. Now I know it just means invisible enough to keep the peace. The phone buzzed once more. I let it ring, because I wasn't ready to hear what they needed, not when they'd never asked what I'd lost. It was a Thursday night, but the house looked like Sunday. The dining table had the good dishes laid out, the ones with the silver rims we only used for holidays. There was pot roast, too dry. A bottle of wine breathing in the center. Cloth napkins folded into triangles. Chelsea had done those. She always said presentation mattered. I arrived 5 minutes early. I always did. Margaret Ward. My mother wore navy, no apron, no earrings, just a string of pearls that never left her skin. She greeted me with a tight nod, then walked into the kitchen without a word. The roast needed checking, she said, though it had already been out of the oven for 10 minutes. Raymond Ward. My father sat at the end of the table, elbows not touching the surface, reading the Gazette. He didn't fold the paper down when I entered. He never did. Chelsea arrived last, of course, her hair-curled, lipstick-perfect eyes already damp with preloaded emotion. We sat. For a few minutes we made a show of normal. Asked about traffic, the weather, something about the new strip mall in downtown Cedar Falls. Then Mom folded her napkin in half and set it beside her plate. "I heard," she said. No one asked what. We all knew. I had found the invoices 3 days earlier. Double payments. Inflated contracts, a forged signature that almost but not quite matched the office assistant's. I didn't go to the police. I didn't even go to Chelsea. I went to my mother. I thought she would want to fix it quietly. For Dad. For the business. Instead, she called this dinner. I heard she said again. And I need to ask. What exactly you thought you were doing? Chelsea's fork clinked against her plate. Dad turned a page of his paper without looking up. I tried to keep my voice steady. I didn't report anything. I just thought we should... No, Mom interrupted, her voice still calm. You didn't report anything. Yet. She smoothed the tablecloth with one hand. Do you have any idea what this would do to your father's name? To this family? She looked at me then, not angry, not even disappointed, just assessing. Chelsea shifted in her seat. She didn't cry yet. She didn't need to. She had Mom's voice to do it for her. I wasn't trying to expose anyone, I said. You just embarrassed your sister in front of the board, Mom cut in. That wasn't my intention. But that was the result. I looked at my father. He was watching the article on page B6 like it might dissolve if he blinked. I waited. He didn't speak. The silence in the room was heavy and clean like a kitchen right after bleach. Then, Mom said the sentence that stayed with me longer than any scream could have. "If you can't keep this in the family, you are not family." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't explain. I folded my napkin, laid it on the plate, and stood. No one stopped me. No one called my name. I walked out through the front door, the one with the brass handle I polished every Thanksgiving. I heard it close behind me. That was all. That was the last time I saw that house. Not because I couldn't go back, but because I finally understood it had never really been mine. Before that dinner, before the invoices, before my name was quietly erased, there were years of staying. Not just staying quiet, staying present, staying useful. I was the one who picked up Dad's prescriptions after his knee replacement when Chelsea forgot twice. I drove him to physical therapy on Mondays and Thursdays, even when I had to leave work early to do it. He never said thank you, but he did grunt once, which for him was nearly sentimental. I cleaned out the garage every spring, not because anyone asked, but because no one else would. I made dinner most Sundays. Mom would say she was tired, that her back had been acting up, or that the oven wasn't heating right again. So I'd bring over roast chicken or a casserole, something easy, and watch her criticize the salt level anyway. Chelsea didn't cook. She'd arrive late with wine and a new story about someone she knew from yoga or real estate. She'd toss her coat over the banister and kiss the top of Mom's head like a woman in a commercial. I usually did the dishes while they laughed in the other room. When Chelsea's son Ben had strep throat last fall, I left work to pick him up from school. I stayed with him until after midnight, even though Chelsea said she'd be home by 7. She never called. I just waited, made him toast, found an old Looney Tunes DVD he liked. The next morning, Chelsea sent a text, "Thanks for helping out." "You're a lifesaver." No heart emoji, no follow-up, nothing since. Sometimes I wondered if she even remembered that night. Sometimes I wondered if any of them did. The family business Ward and Kinley Construction was supposed to belong to both of us one day. That's what Dad used to say. "Your grandfather built this from nothing, he told us. One day it'll be yours to carry." But when I asked to sit in on quarterly meetings, I was told the room was full. When I brought in a small-town architect for a sustainable housing project, I was told it wasn't aligned with our image. Chelsea once brought in a landscape artist she met at a winery, and suddenly we had an overpriced brochure and a redesigned website. No one asked what I thought. They just asked me to send the invoices. I was the one who processed payroll, who knew every vendor's daughter's name, who stayed late when it snowed because the cleaning crew couldn't make it. And still, somehow, I was always the one being told to stay in the background to let Chelsea handle the client-facing stuff because I was better with numbers. That's how it always was. Do the work, stay useful, be invisible. Except once. One Thursday, after a particularly messy winter storm, I stayed late to help the janitorial staff clear a salt spill in the loading area. My hands were raw, the air stung like citrus. I was wearing one of Chelsea's old scarves. She'd left it in the office 3 months ago, never asked for it back. As I hauled the mop bucket back in the older woman who cleaned our offices, Maribel stopped me. She looked at me for a long second, then said, "You're the one who stays behind." That was all. No flowers, no bonus, no praise in the company newsletter. Just those 6 words said quietly like a truth no one else wanted to say out loud. And I still remember them. Because sometimes I think, if even the cleaning lady saw me, why didn't they? It started with a spreadsheet. Quarterly numbers didn't match vendor invoices. I thought it was a rounding error at first, maybe a duplicated payment, but the deeper I looked, the more it unraveled. Fake contractors, inflated material costs, a signature that mimicked one of our temp assistants close but off by 1 loop in the G. The paper trail led back to one name, Chelsea. She wasn't clever about it, just confident that no one would ever question her. I printed everything, placed it in a plain manila folder, and took it home. Sat on my apartment floor with a yellow highlighter circling everything twice. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I knew what I was going to do. Not report it, not go to the board, just tell my mother. I still believed that Margaret Ward, with all her pride and pearls and posture, would want to protect the name more than protect the mess. I was wrong. When I showed her the folder, she didn't even touch it. She listened in silence, standing by the kitchen sink with her arms crossed over her apron like a shield. Then she said, "We'll take care of it." That was all. She didn't ask for copies, didn't question the numbers, didn't deny that Chelsea's name was on the checks. She just said it like a closing argument. I left the folder on the counter untouched. The next morning, I arrived at the office, scanned my badge. Nothing happened. I tried again. A red light blinked. The door stayed locked. I called Maribel. She buzzed me in from the back, said the system had probably glitched, but my computer login didn't work either. My name was gone from the employee portal. My email returned undeliverable. A new girl sat at the front desk, smiling, asking if I had an appointment. No one said anything. Not my father, not Chelsea, not HR. They didn't fire me. They just erased me, like a typo in a family scrapbook. I walked out without saying a word, just like I had at that dinner table, just like they expected me to. That night, I checked my phone twice, not because I expected an apology, but I thought maybe someone might want to explain. They didn't. No missed calls, no voicemails, no messages asking what I'd found, what it meant, what I wanted. Just silence. I kept the folder. Not because I intended to use it. There's still a part of me even now that recoils at the idea of exposure. But I needed proof. Not for a court, for myself. Because when people decide you no longer exist, it helps to hold something real in your hands. Something that says, you were here. You saw it. You weren't wrong. I didn't hear from them after that. Until this morning. Now they're calling again and again, and I have to wonder, is it guilt that brought them back, or is Chelsea in deeper than even I imagined? The silence didn't feel sharp at first. It crept in like cold through old window panes, slow, certain, and hard to notice until it settled into your bones. I moved out of my apartment over the bakery downtown. Took a room above Grady's Hardware instead. It was smaller, but the rent was clean and the landlord minded his own business. I liked that. My phone stayed mostly quiet. The only regular notifications were pharmacy reminders and promotional emails from stores I no longer shopped at. No birthdays were missed because no one remembered mine. No holidays ruined because no one invited me. Just clean, unbroken silence. I kept busy. Work at Grady's was simple shelves to restock customers to help deliveries to sign. I started learning the names of screws, the different kinds of lumber. There was comfort in things that did what they said they'd do. Every Wednesday night I made pasta, a habit I couldn't shake. I still cooked like someone might show up. No one ever did. Chelsea's scarf hung behind my door, same one I wore when Maribel thanked me. I thought about returning it once months ago. Folded it neatly, placed it in a small box. Even wrote her name on the corner in pencil like she might forget it was hers. I picked up my phone that night, found her contact, stared at it. And then I didn't call. I turned off the lamp, slid the box back under my bed. Chelsea hadn't asked for the scarf. I figured she wouldn't miss it. Maybe that's what made it easier to hold on to. There were moments, quiet, forgettable ones, when I almost reached out. When I read a headline Dad would have argued with. When I passed the church Mom still volunteers at the same hydrangeas still blooming by the side door. But every time something stopped me. Not anger. Not even pride. Just the memory of that red light blinking on the office door. The sound of my own name returning not found. That kind of silence doesn't just happen. It's built. And they built it very well. One night, as I folded laundry with the windows open, I heard a familiar voice on the sidewalk below, someone from the Ward and Kinley office, laughing, chatting, living like nothing had changed. I didn't feel anything. Not really. Just a small, steady recognition that they had gone on, and so had I. But the difference was, I hadn't pretended nothing broke. I just stopped expecting anyone to fix it. I woke to the sun slanting across the floorboards the same way it had every morning since I moved in. Light crawling through dusty blinds, catching on the same nick in the wood where I once dropped a box of bolts. I boiled water for tea, sat at the counter, scrolled past an email from the hardware distributor, a coupon for winter gloves, junk. Then I saw them. 14 missed calls, 11 from Mom, 2 from Chelsea, 1 from Dad. I didn't panic. Not even curiosity came quickly. It was more like an old coat being pulled off a hook, familiar heavy, and not entirely welcome. I waited almost an hour before pressing play. It's about your sister. She's gone. His voice was flat, not shaken, not broken. Gone. Not missing. Not hurt. Not specific. Just gone. I replayed the message, leaned against the sink, watched the steam rise from my mug like something escaping. What did gone mean? Chelsea had a way of disappearing without going far. Trips to Palm Springs that turned into 3 weeks. Yoga retreats with no signal. Men with second homes and no wives. But this wasn't from her. It was from them. From the people who had scrubbed me out of their photos, their dinners, their company's payroll. And now suddenly they needed me. Needed something. I didn't know what exactly, but I knew what it wasn't. It wasn't a real invitation. Not to return, not to belong, not to be seen. I looked at the scarf again, still hanging by the door, still untouched. For a second I thought about packing it, dropping it off, sending a text. Found this, thought you might need it, but I didn't move, because I knew the difference now, between needing someone and needing someone to clean up the mess. They hadn't called because they missed me. They called because the person they protected had finally slipped too far. And for the first time there was no one left to blame but themselves. I finished my tea. Let the voicemail sit there. Then, without a second thought, I pressed delete. The voicemail was gone. The screen now blank, like it had never lit up with their names at all. I made tea again just for the warmth. The mug left a faint ring on the counter which I wiped away without thinking. Then I walked to the drawer beside the bed, the one with the things I never fully unpacked. Inside, still sealed and untouched, was the manila folder. Chelsea's invoices, the forged signatures, the spreadsheet I printed at midnight with my heart pounding like I was stealing from my own blood. For months I kept it. Not to use, not to threaten, just to know I hadn't imagined it, that I hadn't broken something that was already cracked. I flipped through the pages once more, slowly, like they might speak. They didn't. Not even paper can hold meaning forever. I fed them through the shredder. One by one. The whirring blades the only sound in the room. When I finished, I ran my hands along the empty folder, then folded it in half and dropped it in the trash. Not because they deserved my silence, but because I didn't need to hold their lies anymore. Next, I picked up my phone. Blocked Chelsea's number first, then Mom's, then Dad's. The screen prompted me. Are you sure you want to block this contact? I tapped yes 3 times each with the same stillness as pouring a glass of water. No rage, no relief, just done. Outside, the wind picked up, rattled the old window panes like it always did around this time of year. I pulled Chelsea's scarf from the hook and held it once more. The fabric smelled like dust now. I placed it in the donation box by the door, folded neatly. No note. Let someone else find use in what was never really mine to begin with. By noon, the apartment was quieter than usual. Not silent, just finally at peace. They could keep the dinners, the name, the version of events they'd rehearsed for anyone who asked, but they couldn't keep the story whole without me, and I'd decided I would no longer be their missing piece. I didn't leave with a fight. I left with silence. And silence, I've learned, is not the absence of noise. It's the absence of permission, the refusal to explain, the final word without saying one. They might tell the story differently now, say I was overreacting, say I ran, say I never understood how family works. But stories need all their characters to stand. And I've stepped out of the frame. I didn't leave quietly. I stayed quiet, and that was louder than they ever expected. If silence ever cost you everything, just leave a dot.